453. Morning Live starts now. An Inspector General of Police Douglas Kanja has stated that the National Police Service will not hesitate to arrest any individual implicated in the recent violent invasion involving suspected thugs at All Saints Cathedral in Nairobi County. Kanja emphasized that the ongoing investigations into the incident is active and comprehensive, warning that anyone found to be involved, including politicians or police officers, will face the full force of the law. His remarks comes amid heightened concern of organized criminal groups linked to the attack.
Na ningesema kuhusu uhalifu, mimi naongelea uhalifu nchi yetu yote ya Kenya. Nimesema maneno ya goons and guns. Hiyo sisi kama jeshi la polisi ya Kenya hatutakubaliana na hiyo kamwe. Jana nilikuwa na maofficers wote wakubwa ya mikoa yote, the regional police commanders, the formation commanders, and the county commanders. I had a conference with them so that they can be able to get it straight from myself. I, the Inspector General, did direct all of them that they must deal very firmly on matters goons, on matters criminal gangs. Hiyo mnaniunga mkono? Si ni kweli? Lazima hiyo watu wanasubua wananchi washughulikiwe na wachukuliwe hatua kali. Si ni kweli? Na ndio sababu nasema mimi nataka tushikane pamoja, tufanye kazi pamoja kama wananchi ya Kenya. Si ni kweli? Sisi kama maofisa ya jeshi la polisi na nyinyi kama wananchi wetu. Si ni kweli? Tufanye kazi pamoja in the community partnership. Na tukifanya namna hiyo tutafaulu. Si ni kweli? Tutafaulu na tutasoga mbele sana.
Now, the fourth suspect in the All Saints Cathedral Church attack case will be held at a police station for 9 days to allow further investigations. The suspect, identified as Frederick Omondi Demba, was presented before the Kibera Law Court, where police requested more time to detain him, saying he was captured on CCTV cameras allegedly among a group of hooligans who invaded the church and caused violence. And according to the investigative officer, there is a need to analyze the CCTV footage and collect information about the registration of the motorcycle allegedly used by the suspect during the incident. The court approved the request and ordered that the suspect be detained for 9 days while investigations into this incident continue.
Before court was captured in a CCTV footage which was retrieved and is currently being analyzed by the forensic experts, Your Honor, at the National Forensic Lab at the DC headquarters, Your Honor. Respondent before court, the suspect was also on board a motorcycle which he was using, Your Honor. We've also written to the NTSA to get the particulars and other details in regards to the motorcycle.
Kwa hivyo nitamruhusu aweze kusalia pale Kibra Police Station kwa muda wa siku 9 na kesi itatajwa tarehe 30 mwezi wa 6 mwaka huu ili tuweze kupata mwongozo jinsi.
Now, Wiper Party leader Kalonzo Musyoka has strongly condemned the return of groups of hooligans in the country who allegedly used to disrupt peaceful meetings and gatherings. Speaking in Kitui, Kalonzo said it is sad to see groups of people using threats and violence being allowed to disrupt peaceful political and social activities. The leader claimed that some police officers have failed to fulfill their duty on protecting citizens and maintaining security. Instead, he said some officers are accused of insisting and protecting criminals who are used to intimidate political opponents. Kalonzo insisted that security agencies must perform their duties professionally without political bias and ensure the right of citizens to assemble and express their opinions is protected under the Constitution.
Kuna idara ya polisi ambayo sasa inamilikiwa na magun, yani wahuni. Wengine wabeba mapastola, wengine na kazi ya polisi ukifika Nairobi badala ya kulinda usalama wa wananchi wanalinda magun. Ndio magun wazuie kina Kalonzo na kina Gachagua na kina Jebi Muturi na kina Matiang'i na wale wengine Eugene Wamalwa, tusisonge na
Alright, now let's turn to stories that made headlines yesterday and of course actually made headline today on the dailies. Members of Parliament yesterday supporting the government and the opposition counterparts have continued to differ sharply over the 2026-2027 finance bill led by the majority leader, that is in the National Assembly, that is Kimani Ichung'wah. Government allied MPs claimed that the bill does not introduce new taxes on citizens. And of course, they accused opposition leaders of what they termed as misleading the public about the content of the bill. However, opposition leaders disputed this, saying the government has introduced more taxes and levies that will increase the cost of living for citizens. They said some of the proposals in the bill will increase the burden of on taxpayers and affect business operations. Responding to the Treasury protocols, the Treasury proposals, I beg your pardon, opposition MPs also disagreed with the proposal to tax goods or services immediately once they are activated or start being used, saying this move will burden business people and consumers. Take a look.
With the National Treasury on payment of tax upon activation. So the status quo on how funds are charged tax remains. And we urge now that there be systems in place to make sure that that mobile phones that are imported into the country without paying the required taxes, they administratively find a way of capturing those instead of burdening the taxpayer with extra responsibilities. Number two, on the issue of Mitumba, we have had extensive public participation, and we want to guarantee the members of the public that there is no any imposed taxation on Mitumba.
It is true they want to zero rate the issue of Mutumba, but what they are not telling you is that they want now the VAT that people who trade in that business have been claiming, they will not be able to claim. That is the direct increment to the issue of Mutumba. And lastly, let me say the National Assembly is a place of debate. Why end a debate under Standing Order 95 that you do not want us to debate any further? You want us to vote. We can't.
Now, leaders of anti-corruption institutions in Africa have officially launched the Africa Anti-Corruption Studies and Research Center in Nairobi, the first of its kind on the continent. The center will provide research training and technical support to anti-corruption agencies in various African countries. The launch took place during the 8th General Conference of the Association of African Anti-Corruption Authorities, that is AAACA, which brought together heads of more than 45 anti-corruption institutions from across the continent. Participants said that corruption has evolved into a cross-border problem, with perpetrators using modern technology to hide and transfer illegal funds without easy detection. This situation has forced Africa to seek new ways of cooperation to identify and track multi-country corruption cases.
The center represents a major step forward in strengthening evidence-based anti-corruption policy, research, capacity building, and knowledge sharing across our continent. I encourage all member institutions to support the center through collaborative research, technical expertise, and the exchange of knowledge.
Corruption today is no longer localized or isolated phenomenon. It has become increasingly sophisticated, technologically enabled, and transnational in character. The process of corruption moves rapidly across jurisdictions. These threats do not respect national borders. Consequently, our response cannot be confined within them.
Now, President William Ruto has said that the ocean is a shared heritage that contributes to the lives, trade, and development of millions of people in Africa and the world. Addressing the 11th Our Ocean Conference held in Mombasa, the President said that oceans are facing threats of climate change, plastic pollution, and illegal fishing. where the head of state also explained that Kenya has already begun efforts to restore mangroves, clean water, improve the fisheries sector, and strengthen the management of marine resources. In addition, he asked development partners to help achieve the goal of protecting 30% of the ocean by the year 2030, insisting that investment in the blue economy and collaborations to address illegal fishing. He stressed that the success of the conference will be measured by the real actions taken after the meeting, urging countries to choose action over promises in protecting the ocean for future generations.
Is who we are. Picture the shores of Mombasa before dawn. A fisherman pushes his boat into the tide. A trader traces routes her grandfather once sailed. A business owner inland depends on goods arriving through the port of Mombasa. A taxi driver hundreds of kilometers away relies on fuel that lands there. Different lives, different journeys, all connected by the ocean. Their stories remind us of a simple truth. The ocean is not only the livelihood of those who live beside it, it shapes the lives of millions who may never see it. Every container lifted at the port of Mombasa supports livelihoods in Nairobi, Kisumu, Kampala, Kigali, and beyond. As the gateway to landlocked nations across East and Central Africa, it connects millions of people to trade, opportunity, and growth. Our ocean powers industries, feeds families, protects our shores, and helps safeguard the planet. This is our shared inheritance. Yet today, that inheritance is under strain from warming seas, plastic pollution, illegal fishing, and the silent disappearance of life beneath the waves. Kenya is already at work. We are restoring mangroves, cleaning our waters, reforming fisheries.
Deputy President Kithure Kindiki has said that Kenya will continue to fully participate in national efforts to protect the ocean and marine environment. Speaking during the opening of the 11th Hour Ocean Conference in Mombasa, Kindiki said that the health of the ocean is important for global well-being and human life. He stressed that the pressure affecting the ocean is caused by human activities and can therefore be controlled through strong conservation measures. He also said that that Kenya has been at the forefront in international discussions on the ocean and the blue economy, calling on countries to collaborate in protecting marine biodiversity and addressing the effects of climate change. Kindiki said that the current generation has a duty to leave their children cleaner, safer oceans, and that can withstand environmental challenges better than they are today.
Our gathering here is also an opportunity for us to reflect on the pressure that exists and that continues to be exerted on the oceans. And pressure that is human-made. And if it is human-made pressure, it means it can be managed, can be controlled, and the human activity that has exerted environmental pressure on our oceans can be addressed for the reversal of some of the effects that are undermining the health of our oceans. And therefore, we must appreciate how unsustainable the situation as it is today is, and work towards implementation of a sustainability program. And as just been said by Secretary John Kerry and other speakers, moving to action and impact. Kenya has been associated with the global debates on the oceans for quite a bit of time. 50 years ago, Kenya took a very, very active role in the debates and the conversations that eventually culminated in the adoption of the UN Convention on the...
As politics ahead of the next year's general elections intensify in various parts of the country, the Kenya Union of Post-Primary Education Teachers, that is KUPPET, has raised concerns about the political heat following reported violence in some areas. Speaking to the media in Nairobi County, leaders of the union said many teachers fear for their safety and some have already requested transfers from areas with high political competition. Now, the leaders warned politicians who may be found spreading ethnic-based politics, calling on security agencies and the National Cohesion and Integration Commission, that is the NCIC, to intervene and ensure those making such threats and hate speech face legal action.
Natoa onyo kwa wanasiasa na viongozi ambao wanatoa matamshi na kuelekeza injili ya ukabila, na kuambia wale ambao sio wa sehemu fulani waweze kuondoka, kwamba hiyo hatutakubali kama chama, kama walimu, sababu walimu ni baadhi ya wale watu ambao wanaeneza ile utangamano ama kukuja pamoja kwa inji. Kumbukeni, azma moja ya elimu ni kuleta ile ushirikiano ama unity katika nchi yetu.
We urge the police, the Directorate of Criminal Investigations, and the National Cohesion and the Integration Commission to act with speed to hold politicians to account for the speech before it is too late. Security agencies must also address the emerging culture of goonism, which is formalizing political violence.
Now, teachers leaders in Kakamega County have strongly condemned an attack targeting students who were returning home after participating in a music festival, describing the incident as tragic and unacceptable. The teachers said that the Bayer Secondary School bus was damaged during the violence, while some students and teachers were injured. They have called on the police to speed up investigations and ensure all those responsible are brought to book and taken to court. They also condemned the use of hooligans in political activities and stressed that students should not be involved in politics. They also urged school heads to be careful when allowing schools' buses to be used for non-academic activities. The teachers expressed hope that justice will be served for the affected students and teachers, while calling on politicians to conduct peaceful politics ahead of the next year's general election.
Even the bus belonging to Binyenya Secondary School was also vandalized. It is a shame in this age and era that we still have goons who are hired, whether they are political goons hired by the pro-government or the opposition. We want to condemn that and say, let us not associate our learners with the politics of the day. Correct. As teachers, we are saying learners are the first line of duty, and that's why we are here today. And we are saying for the parents from those learners who are injured that day, we are saying poleni sana. We want to ask the police and the investigating agencies that kindly get down to the bottom of this matter. We will not also rest until we know that the heads have rolled and the people have been arrested and action has been taken.
Tunajua huyo ni yule tu mdogo. Kuna wale wakubwa ambao wamepanga mambo hayo. Na tunataka kushutumu kitendo cha hooliganism in Kakamega County. Yes. Hooliganism imekuwa tatizo kubwa, hata raia wa kawaida kutembea imekuwa shida. Huwezi kuhudhuria matanga kwa amani, na sasa tumejidunisha chini mpaka hata sasa tunapiga watoto mawe. Hiyo ni haki kweli? Mtoto mdogo mchanga ambaye hana hatia ameenda tu kufanya mashindano ya mziki na anapigwa
Kiambu Governor Kimani Wamatangi has said that he has no intention of seeking political popularity, but his main goal is to serve Kenyans with integrity and respect. Speaking during a public meeting, Wamatangi said he was elected as governor and therefore he has a duty to serve the residents of Kiambu County by fulfilling his responsibilities without being influenced by political pressure. The governor said that he has been facing strong opposition due to his stance on defending justice and truth for the people, insisting that he will not step back from delivering development in the county. He said leaders should work with respect to the authority given to them by the people rather than trying to please others for political favor or illegitimate support.
Hata kwa hii vita mnaona mimi napigwa mingi sana. Ati kwa vile ni masimama na msimamo mmoja wa kusema ya kwamba haki yetu na ukweli wetu kama wana Kiambu ni kulinda haki ya hawa wenye wanadharauliwa. Ama namna gani jameni? Na nikasema mimi sitaki kupendwa. Sitaki kupendwa huko juu na wapi, hata sitaki kupendwa na wamechaguliwa. Nataka kuweka heshima ya kusema ya kwamba ukipatiwa kazi, heshima wenye wamekupatia kazi. Fanya kazi umepewa. Mimi hata nikibeba mali yenu yote niende nikajipendekeze kwa wamechaguliwa na mimi. Ati nikiangalia mahali tu shamba yenu ati niunganishe hao ndio waseme mimi ni mzuri tugawanyane, alafu nienda nikajifanya jamaa wa maana huko. Hiyo ni laana, sio baraka. Ama namna gani jameni? Yes. Hapa Kiambu nilisema siwezi kuchaguliwa senator, nichaguliwa mara ya pili, nichaguliwa governor, alafu nirudi tena kuwaomba kazi nikiwa ninakuja na sarakasi na mdomo na story na wimbo ati niwadanganye mnichague mara ya pili. Uamuzi wangu ni moja. Kama nyinyi mkikagua muone ya kwamba Wamatangi mwaka wa 2027 hajafanya kazi, basi hakuna haja yangu kurudi kuomba kazi mara nyingine. Nilisema nitawaomba kura ya 2027 kwa mjadala na kwa ticket moja peke yake ya ile kazi nimefanya. Na ndio mnaona nimeingia kwa hii county, nimesema wacha ionekane ya kwamba mtu anaweza kuingia akiwa amekata kauli ya kazi na ionekane kazi imefanyika.
Now sadness has engulfed Nyeri County after a body found a few days ago wrapped in a sack in the Ngarithi area where it was identified as that of Joyce Kanini, a resident of the Classic area and a graduate of Nyeri Technical Training Institute. The identification was confirmed after her family was involved in the investigation process following the discovery of the body. Postmortem examination revealed that Kanini died from excessive bleeding due to severe injuries, and according to investigating officers, the body was found badly damaged with some body organs missing. Police say parts of the lower body have already been recovered, while efforts to find the head, neck, and one arm are still underway. The family said they had not initially identified the body as that of Joyce Kanini until they were informed of the developments in the investigations.
At this point, hata sikuwa najua kama kuna mwili umepatikana mahali, lakini nikiwa pale ndio nikasikia wakiongea, wakisema hata huyu kijana ndiye aliniambia. Akaniambia kuna semekana kuna mwili ulipatikana, lakini nilienda nikauangalia na nikaona si mwili wa Joy. And of course I could not think that mambo ya it did come to me that body connection na mambo ya mtoto.
This is a case of a murder most fall. The way and manner in which the deceased was killed is unfathomable. She was decapitated from the head, the arms, as well as the lower limbs. Currently, as we speak, the lower limbs were able to be traced, and the missing parts of the body is the head, the neck, as well as the arm.
Kitendo hiki ni kibaya, kinauma, na tungependa kusema hivi. Tunaposema pole kwa Reverend Gathu na Pastor Faith, lakini jambo hili si la family, ni la jamii kubwa kama nchi, na vitendo kama hii tunahitaji kuwa na njia ya kujizuia kuwa nazo.
All right, now a man identified as Ole Sururu, a father of 3 children, has died after being hit on the ribs by a poisoned arrow. And according to a witness of the incident, the deceased, who was a security guard at Mudera farm, was allegedly attacked by a suspected businessman who had leased part of the controversial 4,200-acre farm belonging to the family of the deceased and the former minister Mbiu Koinange. The incident began after 3 security guards were reportedly on patrol inside the farm where suspected youths shot the deceased with an arrow before fleeing the scene. News of the attack spread quickly and caused tension among local residents. Now residents are now calling on the government to arrest those allegedly funding the series of contract killings and land conflicts continuing at Mudera farm in Mount Narok.
Bwana hakufa katika kifo cha kawaida, ameuawa. Alipouawa alikimbishwa hata kutoka ndani ya shamba, akajaribu kutorokea usalama, akaja kuuawa nje ya shamba, msituni, porini mahali, akiomba huruma. Na kwa hivyo wale watu waliomuua, ina maana kwamba walikuwa na instructions za kutosha kwamba lazima muhakikishe mmeangusha mtu, kwa sababu hata baada ya kuomba huruma bado waliendelea na kukamaliza. Hawa watu hawakujituma, walikuwa wametumwa na mtu, lakini inaonekana huyu bwana hakuwa mkulima wa kawaida. Huyu alikuwa anataka shamba, alikuwa anataka kunyang'anya lile shamba, na amekuwa kilima zaidi ya eka 1000. Na tumejaribu kumuelewesha documents za shamba ndio hizi, akajaribu kukalishwa chini na sub county, lakini haelewi chochote, akageukia kutumia silaha.
Kwa hivyo sisi tunaomba serikali leo, hiyo mtu pahali popote ataenda, kaunti ya Narok, kaunti ya Kajiado, kaunti popote ataenda Baringo, ifuatwe na kukamatwa na kuwekwa ndani, kwa sababu yeye ndio kifo ya marehemu imepita kwa mkono yake.
All right, quite an unfortunate story right there. Of course, at that note, let's take a short breather here on Morning Live. We'll be back in just a bit.
You are watching EBN TV, transforming your world.
EBN TV cares about the growth of your business. To advertise with us, call 0725 386 501 or 0740 653 453. EBN TV, transforming your world.
You are watching EBN TV, transforming your world.
Eight minutes past the top of the hour. My name is Macharia, watching Morning Live. Now let's take a look on what's making headlines on the dailies today. And I'm having the Daily Nation, of course, the standard newspaper this morning, dated the 18th day of June 2026. Let's kick it off with the Daily Nation. Says storm over secret 180 billion Kenya shillings JKIA deal. Of course, they say the row after cancellations of a contentious project by Indian billionaire Gautama Adani in the aftermath of the 2024 Gen Z protest. The government is courting fresh controversy following reports of the award of the new contract for the expansion of Jomo Kenyatta International Airport to the Chinese firm through a process that critics say it is locked in secrecy. Two sources within state agencies overseeing the procurement confirmed that the contract was awarded this month and is awaiting expiry of the 14-day period within which dissatisfied bidders are allowed to challenge the process. And of course, that's a story on page 4 and 5 of the Daily Nation this morning. And of course, there is a picture there of Stephen Mutoro from COFEC. Of course, says COFEC has established that the joint venture partner is owned by a man COFEC had already petitioned the courts to bar from Kenya. Of course, according to Sheila Masinde from TISA, says also key in full information on the financing model, including any debt obligations Kenyans are being committed to. Charles Kanjama, who is the president of the Law Society of Kenya, that is LSK, says in the court address concerns from around full accountability and public participation, or we seek court intervention. Of course, Senator Okiya Omtata says the whole thing is being procured in contemptuous disregard of the Constitution. We are going to resist it. Of course, that's in regards to whatever is happening in the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport, and of course the deals which the Nation now leads to, a deal which is in secrecy. All right. Now that's a story you can get on page 4, exclusively on page 4 and 5 of the Daily Nation this morning. Now, Ruto tells G7 Africa will power future global growth. President William Ruto champions Africa's cause during meeting with world leaders, saying the era of exploiting the continent for its critical minerals is gone. Of course, there is a picture there of President William Ruto with fellow leaders from, British Prime Minister Keir Starmer, French President Emmanuel Macron, and Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney at the G7 summit in France. That's the story on page 6, I beg your pardon, on the Daily Nation. Now, story making headlines, of course, the better part of this week, Finance Bill 2026-2027, and of course, MPs reject public push to lower pay as you earn. Of course, the National Assembly Finance and National Planning Committee has ignored many petitions to amend tax laws to adjust pay as you earn bans and increase personal relief to hand salaried workers more disposable income. Now, various interest groups in their memorandum on the finance bill lobbied for pay as you earn review to caution lower income earners from high tax rates, and as well as to cap the maximum rate at 30%, but the MPs have avoided the proposals, right? Now that's a story on page 7. Of course, it is exclusively on the Standard newspaper, where the Standard says, tax bill rebellion. Now, on the front page of the Daily Nation as well, matters to do with healthcare. No marriage certificate, no IVF, SHA rule shocker. Now, a teacher unable to conceive naturally for years was hopeful that Social Health Authority would cover in vitro fertilization, that is IVF, until she faced another hurdle. That's the story on page 8 that you can get on the Daily Nation this particular morning in regards to matters health. Now on page 2, blame game hits up over school unrest. Of course, that has been there. It's not actually a new story. Leaders saying, parents actually need to, take good care of their kids, and of course, to mold their character. But yet again, parents as well accuse the education ministry of not imposing stricter measures as far as the safety of students, especially boarding students, concerned. All right. Now, as mayhem in school eases, a debate has erupted over accountability, with stakeholders divided over their responsibility. And the violent wave of student unrest across school nationwide appears to have subsided, giving way to a heated blame game among parents, teachers, and school administrators. and the government officials as well over who should be held accountable for the disruption of learning, destruction of property, and loss of lives. President William Ruto has also waded into the debate, saying that society should not shift blame to schools and government institutions whenever learners engage in destructive behavior. A task force that was promised by Education Cabinet Secretary, that is Julius Migoso Gamba, to find solutions is yet to be appointed. A parents' lobby has, however, turned the spotlight on schools and educators, authorities accusing them of failing to enforce safety regulations and sidelining parents from matters affecting their children. The chairman of the National Parents Association, Silas Obuhatsa, said many schools school safety policies exist only on paper and have not been effectively implemented. All right. Of course, this actually, blame game from school administrators, educators, teachers, and government and parents alike. And of course, they say that the committee that was to be set by the Ministry of Education to bring solutions. Of course, this is actually not the first time. When these things actually happen, they come up and say, now we'll come up with a committee that will actually be reviewing the safety of these schools. They be active for several months, and yet again we don't hear from them. Now this again happens. Another committee set to be created, to try and find solutions to this menace that has actually been crippling our nation years after years. That's the story on page 2 on matters of education. You can actually get that on page 2. Now, on page 2, still matters of education, Kupet says politicians' rhetoric is creating fear among teachers. Now, the Kenya Union of Post-Primary Education Teachers, that is Kupet, has warned politicians against making insightful remarks, saying the rhetoric is creating fear among educators, with 61 teachers already seeking transfers over safety concerns. The union said it had received disturbing reports of heightened ethnic incitement in Nyandarua County, where rival politicians are campaigning for the Ol-Kalou by-election. It noted that such warnings are being issued openly by politicians who appear unconcerned about inter-ethnic harmony as long as they secure political power. Of course, it's actually quite a worrying state. Of course, we do actually understand the teachers looking around what has been happening in regards to the issue when there has been by-elections, especially in 2025, November 27th. You'll remember some of the constituencies were actually marred by violence, and the wave of hooliganism that has been there in the country, especially the recent one at All Saints Cathedral, in churches, and of course schools are not, they are not an exception. All right, and of course the competitors are now raising fears, saying that they fear for the political atmosphere in Ol-Kalou, that is in Nyandarua County, ahead of the election that is next year. All right, of course the by-election which is in Ol-Kalou, I beg your pardon. Now that's the story on page 2 of the Daily Nation this morning. Tearful send-off for 2 Utumishi Dome fire victims who harbored big dreams. Of course, one wanted to be a lawyer but never got to argue her first case. The other aspired to be a veterinarian, but that never came to pass. And neither lived to fulfill those ambitions after dormitory fire at Tumishi Girls Academy Senior School claimed their lives. Grief engulfed families in Baringo and Turkana counties yesterday as they were buried 2 of the 16 students who died in the tragic incident. They are Imani Boit, a 17-year-old, and a Form 4 student who aspired to become a lawyer, and Fortune Mugoma, a grade 10 student, Fortune Mugoma, who dreamt of, becoming a veterinarian, and mourners gathered at Barwesa village in Baringo West to lay Imani to rest. She was remembered as disciplined, ambitious, and of deep faith. And of course, more than 400 kilometers away in Toekayen village in Turkana West, family and friends said farewell to Fortune, a cheerful student with big dreams. As the two girls were lowered in their final resting places, it became a moment of collective reflection on the futures cut short and the devastating human cost of one of the Kenya's worst school tragedies in recent years. In Barwesa, Imani's father, Raymond Chepkonga, struggled to hold back tears as he paid tribute to his firstborn daughter. Of course, it is quite, a saddening state. And of course, as they say, the smallest casket actually carry the heavy weight. And of course, it's quite saddening, for a parent to bury or to lay to rest, their children. It's quite unfortunate and quite saddening as well. Of course, these were, futures that were extinguished in just a night. Of course, may their soul continue resting in peace. Our condolences from EBN Television pours to, the family and friends of the bereaved. Of course, may they rest in eternal peace. All right, that's the story on page 3 of the Daily Nation this morning. All right, now on that note, let's take a look on what's making headlines on the Standard newspaper this morning. And our top story matters to do with the how we'll be going to finance the budget that was read by the Treasury CS, that is John Badi. All right. Now, tax bill rebellion is actually the top story on all of the story making headline on the front page of the Standard newspaper this morning. Of course, there is a picture there of CS Treasury, that is John Badi, says the battle over the Finance Bill 2026 has escalated into a fierce political showdown after MPs mounted a rare revolt against key national treasury proposals, diluting and rewriting measures expected to raise an additional 120 billion Kenya shillings. While the government insists that there are no new punitive taxes, critics accuse it of barring higher cost in technical tax provisions and pushing the bill through Parliament without adequate scrutiny. Now, the pushback reflects growing anxiety within political circles over the risk of reigniting public anger, reminiscent of the 2024 Gen Z protest. That's a story on page 4 and 5 of the Standard newspaper. Of course, as at now, the bill is actually, set for the third reading in Parliament. All right. Now, on page 4, says Ruto fiscal plan faces acid test as MPs poke holes in the tax proposals. Of course, the National Assembly Committee on Finance and National Planning has sharply broken ranks with President William Ruto's administration systematically poking holes in a raft of aggressive tax measures and recommending the deletion or softening of central proposals in the government's latest revenue-raising plan. The dramatic pushback sets up a major legislative battle between lawmakers and an executive desperate for cash to fund the growing budget deficit. All right. Now, perhaps taking cues on the Gen Z-led protest in 2024, the committee differed with some of the Treasury's proposals in the Finance Bill 2026, and of course, through minimalistic in terms of new tax measures. The bill had contained tax and administrative measures that were projected to raise an additional 120 billion Kenya shillings in revenues to fund the 4.82 trillion budget, and that will, nevertheless cost a strain for Kenyans. All right. Now, this, as it stands, this is actually the highest, budget this country is ever having. We're talking about 4.82 trillion Kenya shillings, of which 1.1 around there will be going to be borrowed, either domestic borrowing or foreign borrowing. All right. Of course, there is an allocation that will be used also as well, to pay for our debt. All right. Now, the biggest political defeats for Treasury, the committee's most consequential reversals were retaining zero-rated VAT status for key manufacturing and agricultural inputs, protecting electric mobility incentives, diluting the deemed dividend tax, scrapping excess duty on mobile phones, blocking tax collection on disputed assessments, and of course reducing punitive compliance penalties, and imposing transparency requirements on KRA's new assessment powers. Now, together, these changes significantly reduce the revenue-raising impact of Treasury's original proposals, while shielding businesses and consumers from several new tax burdens. All right. Of course, these are some of the things that the Treasury has actually says that we are not introducing new taxes and same things we've been hearing of. Now, on page 5, Finance Bill fireworks, opposition government MPs clash over taxes, and it was a day of drama yesterday, sharp exchanges and political brinkmanship in Parliament as MPs once again clashed over alleged hidden tax increases in the Finance Bill of 2026 and its swift progression through the House. Opposition member of Parliament accused the government of sneaking in high costs on key commodities through the back door, insisting that the bill is punitive and introduces additional tax burdens on Kenyans. Critics accused President William Ruto's administration of disguising price increases in technical tax, engage a move they described as mischievous and misleading. For the second day running, supporters and opponents of the bill engaged in heated exchanges, with critics arguing that due process that was not followed during the second reading stage, where debate should have been fully exhausted before the House moved on. At one point, proponents led by Majority Leader Kimani Ichung'wah walked out of the chamber to address the media over what they termed as baseless and sensational claims made by their counterparts. In response, opponents accused the government of running away from the truth, arguing that the hidden cost will deal a severe blow to Kenyans and describing the bill as worse than the controversial Finance Bill of 2024. That's what's making headline on page 5 of the Standard newspaper. Of course, that particular bill is actually being debated in Parliament. It is in its third reading. And of course, the members will actually have an opportunity to vote yes or no to this particular bill. After that, it will proceed to the head of state, whether the head of state will choose whether to or not to assent. All right. In the corridors of justice, AG, Defense Council defend military deployment during Gen Z 2024 Gen Z protests, and Attorney General and the Defense Council have clashed with the Law Society of Kenya over the deployment of the Kenya Defense Forces, that is KDF, to contain the youth-led 2024 protest. The AG, in reply to the LSK's case before High Court Judge Patricia Nyaundi, argued that there is no requirement by the Inspector General of Police to declare an overrun before the military personnel are deployed, while defending the Gazette notice published by then Defense Cabinet Secretary Edwin Duale. AG argued that the purpose of having KDF in the streets was to deter crime. That's as well on page 5 on the Standard newspaper. Now, major promotions reform to see high-ranking classroom teachers. That's what matters, education, and of course there is a major shake-up in the teachers' promotions in the offing. The new scheme aimed to restore academic qualifications as a key promotions criterion. As a key promotion criterion, and reduce job groups from 11 to 9, and to address the stagnation. The reforms also seeks to review the career progression guideline adopted in 2017 by allowing teachers who choose to remain in the classroom to raise through the ranks and earn the same grades and salary scales as their counterparts in administration. That's on page 2. On matters education, KSG Chandaria partner to honor Raila's legacy. There's as well on page 2. Kupet wants more teachers seeking transfer amid rising by-election tension. There's as well on page 2. Now on matters corridors of justice, Gachagwa's son in courts, a 20-year sentence upheld by court. Now the High Court has dismissed an application by a man claiming to be the son of the late Nyeri Governor Nderitu Gachagua, seeking a review of his 20-year jail sentence for the robbery with violence, terming the application on an abuse of the court process. Now, in a ruling delivered yesterday at the Milimani High Court, Justice Alexander Muteti found that Jackson Kihara had failed to demonstrate any illegality, impropriety, or irregularity that would warrant interference with the sentence imposed by the trial court. Justice Muteti held that while the High Court had jurisdiction to consider the application, Kihara had not presented any legal basis to justify a review of the sentence. That's on page 3 on matters to do with the corridors of justice. Now, listen to this other story. It is not till death do you part, judge tells petitioner. All right. Now, Justice Rosaline Aburili yesterday used the Bible and the Constitution to dash a man's hope to keep his estranged wife. The judge leaned on Malachi chapter 2, verse 16, observing that even the Bible recognizes married persons can part ways, but indicated that God hates it. The judge said that although the Catholics view marriage as an indissoluble sacrament, the reality is that the Constitution provides freedom to either walk away or stay. She said the language of the Constitution only provides for the right to marry, but not a right to bind a person in marriage. Justice Aburili at the same time said that Marriage Act of 2014 is not written in mandatory terms, meaning that one could decide to stay or to walk away from marriage by filing a divorce. She said that although there is a right to religion, the law does not allow religious beliefs to be entrenched in the civil law. And according to her, it would be illegal to elevate individual beliefs above the Constitution. The judge said that the issue was delicate, requiring her to determine the law of man against religious beliefs. Of course, in the case of Kimari, argued that Parliament failed to consider the voices of Catholic bishops while enacting Marriage Act of 2014. However, the judge was of the view that failure to consider the Catholic's position on marriage and divorce did not itself render constitutional. Now, Rosaline Aburili, that who is the justice in that particular court, said, and I quote, "Heart and mind are not identical. Spirit is not always the thought. The Marriage Act of 2014 does not govern the state of spirituality or religious beliefs." All right? And, as she says, that the Constitution says that you have a right to choose either to stay or to leave. And of course, in the recent days, actually, we've seen breakups, of course, marriages, people not ending up together, unfortunately. I don't know what's happening to this generation. People actually having as many as 2, 3, 4, 5 kids, and yet again, you know, parting ways. We need to have, you know, self-reflection on how things used to be, you know, in the past. But yet that again does not mean, you know, you stay in a, you know, toxic relationship. We've seen, you know, these homicide cases, and of course, you know, a love triangle, you know, gone worse. So, you know, in as much as, you know, people actually breaking up, it is not actually right as well to stay in a relationship where you feel that, you know, it's not safe for you. All right? That's on the Standard newspaper on page 3 on matters to do with marriage, on what the Constitution dictates on whether to stay or not, and of course what the Bible says in regards to that. All right, you're now up to speed with what you're waking up to this morning. It is exactly 15 minutes past the top of the hour. Your Faith Today is actually coming up next in the top of the hour. Thank you so much for keeping me company until this particular minute. Do have yourself a blessed and productive day ahead. My name is Macharia. I've been watching Morning Live. And of course, God bless, and let's do this again when God says we do.
You are watching EBN TV, transforming your world.
EBN TV cares about the growth of your business. To advertise with us, call 0725 386 501 or 0740 653 453. EBN TV, transforming your world.
You are watching EBN TV, transforming your world.